So a little word about the music. All of the music today is going to be delivered through CDs. And I had so much fun spending time figuring out what to link to different things. Everything that you're hearing has been written by New Thought musicians. So they're all part of the movement of New Thought, of which Unity is also a part. And it, boy, I tell you what, it just makes, I was going to say my heart sing, but... So, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Reverend Linda Zupan, and I'm the Associate Minister here at Crystal Coast Unity. For the past month, we've been using the book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, written by Stephen Post and Jill Niemark, as our discussion guide. And my purpose in sharing this book with you hasn't only been to support your physical and emotional and spiritual health and well-being. And it hasn't been just to have the opportunity to share recent research into the impact of giving and love on human lives. It's also a way to challenge each of us to expand our capacity for giving and loving, and to offer some tools to do that effectively and well. We're beyond the halfway mark in our series, and it's perhaps past time for some reflection. So I ask you to consider, how have these Sunday messages shown up in your everyday life? Are you more connected to your feelings? Are you exploring your capacity for showing love in action? Are you revisiting your definition of giving? Dr. Post tells us in the opening chapter of the book, quote, "The remarkable bottom line of the science of love is that giving protects overall heart health twice as much as aspirin protects against heart disease," end quote. Think about it. This is really an amazing finding. Can you imagine how such a drug would be marketed by the pharmaceutical industry? And how widely such research results would be picked up and repeated by the media? A drug that potent and powerful would be touted as a miracle far and wide. We Unity folk already know that attitude and action, thinking and feeling, focus and attention are markers in our enjoyment of life. I don't want to simply live longer. I want the trinity of longer, happier, healthier life. And that's what we're promised in the subtitle of our focal book. Why Good Things Happen to Good People. The exciting new research that proves the link between doing good and living a longer, healthier, happier life. So, are you ready to move forward? Because today's featured chapters are the way of compassion and the way of loyalty. Dr. Post defines compassion as to suffer with, sharing that his personal icon for expression of compassion is Abraham Lincoln. He reminds us of the stirring words in Lincoln's second inaugural address, quote, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds," end quote. Lincoln, of course, was referring to ending the Civil War, the war between the states, and to the need to offer compassion to the southern states in what he believed would be their unsuccessful bid to continue the practice of slavery, and the concurrent need to offer compassion to freed slaves in their new way of life. We know change, even wanted change, often brings suffering. Dr. Post writes Compassion is immediate. It softens and brightens our world. Brain imagery studies show that we humans are hardwired to feel with others. This is likely part of our species survival toolkit. Some findings from recent research are: compassion begins at birth, and this is from the perspective of the parent or the caregiver. Compassion calms and connects up, probably through the hormone oxytocin. Compassion allows us to mirror others' feelings. Compassion increases positive emotions, and it turns out that compassion is linked to spirituality, like other qualities we've looked at in this series. Dr. Post writes, quote, "As a research topic, compassion is unique among all the ways of giving, in that we have begun to use sophisticated imaging techniques to watch the brains of moms, dads, monks, and others during states of empathy and caring. Compassion actually stops us from imposing suffering, and in that sense, it is our moral compass," end quote. The first of 4 lessons from Frontiers of Research that Dr. Post offers is compassion begins at birth. Again, research confirms what we know experientially. Neuroimaging scans of brains of new mothers and new fathers show that those areas known to be connected to caretaking behaviors light up in response to the cries of their newborn child. Interestingly, cries of babies that are similar in decibel and frequency patterns but belong to strangers did not elicit the same brain response. Parents' brains know the cries of their own child, and research also shows that compassionate nurturing makes a difference in babies' physical and emotional development and in their ongoing ability to deal with stress and upset even into adulthood. In Lesson 2, Let Compassion Calm and Connect You, Dr. Post cites multiple scientific studies into the hormone oxytocin and its role in attachment and connection. One looked at the strong link between compassionate, caring behavior and good mental health within the context of weekly attendance at church. Turns out that merely going to religious services does not protect health. It needs to be coupled with incorporating compassionate action in one's life. And this is confirmation of Unity's 5th principle, isn't it? It's not enough to know the truth. We must live it as well. Lesson 3, Light Up Your Brain, describes the intriguing research into meditation and how its dedicated practice increases not just the capacity for compassion, it increases the actual behaviors that demonstrate caring for others. And the 4th and final lesson on compassion is look right in front of you. Dr. Post looks at studies that attempt to measure why we are more likely to care about and respond to people who are in need near us and where the need is immediate and urgent. This observation reminds me of a story my dad tells about his mother. My father's parents emigrated separately to the United States from areas about 5 miles apart in what used to be Yugoslavia. They met, married, and lived in an ethnic neighborhood in a suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Slovenian was the language spoken in my dad's home. English is his second language. The priests in the neighborhood Catholic Church regularly called for special collections so money could be sent back to the old country. When my grandmother overcame her ingrained deference to authority to ask why so much money was being sent away when the need was so great at home during the Depression, she was told essentially, "There, little woman, Don't you worry about that, we priests know best. My grandmother never set foot in a Catholic church again until the funeral of her husband, my grandfather, some 30 years later. Grandma Zupan was one of the most compassionate women I have ever known. She was always taking care of others. She cared for me when I was a baby. And she had a wide network of correspondents in the old country to whom she regularly sent money and clothing and other items. Grandma was an innately compassionate person, and she knew local was just as important as far away. Both and, not either or. The way of compassion is inclusive and it is connective. It invites us to try on another's shoes and to replace them when they are worn. Like the other qualities we have explored, it can be a powerful gift to others and to ourselves. And the way of loyalty is also a gift. Dr. Post describes the way of loyalty as love across time. And he writes, quote, "Loyalty is love that lasts, and that's what we all want. The commitment inherent in loyalty diffuses our deepest existential anxiety. Broken covenants are hard to restore and never quite attain their state of original trust. It's not easy to find loyalty in our society," end quote. The concept of loyalty often brings to mind our commitment to people, relationships with family, friends, neighbors, work colleagues, school associates, spiritual communities, and others. And Dr. Post reminds us that loyalty to causes, to ideas and ideology, to institutions, to missions, can be an important expression in our lives as well. He also writes that we need to guide our loyalty by reflection and wisdom, because there are times when breaking a commitment or vow is a way of embracing a greater loyalty. Dr. Post, as usual, reports that there are demonstrable benefits to loyalty. In this regard, he reports the following. Both married men and married women are less likely to die than their single counterparts. Friendship can be more beneficial to health in terms of increased longevity than close family relationships. People in healthy, happy, long-term marriages are highly giving and generally feel strong love toward others. Women, in particular, are good at connection and loyal relationships. Children whose parents are in low conflict marriages are happier and more resilient if their parents stay together. And when individuals who were unhappy in their marriages but stayed in them were surveyed 5 years later, 80% reported they were now happy. Dr. Post offers us 8 lessons from the frontiers of research in the way of loyalty. And our first one, no surprise, is a loyal marriage lifts up your life. Dr. Post cites study after study to support this statement, and he shares striking findings about physical and emotional health benefits for both men and women. For myself, I only need to look out at the many examples of loyal marriages among you to see confirmation of this lesson. I also have some personal experience of this, not just in my 2 marriages and my 2 divorces, but in the loving and thriving marriages that I see and witness of my brother Steve to his wife Mary, and my sister Ann to her husband Steve. And I know firsthand that they have each had their own difficult times to work through. Lesson 2 is complementary to the first. Marriage makes a child's world whole. Dr. Post reports on research work by the Institute for American Values to substantiate what children of divorced parents often feel. That divorce means children, even into their 20s and 30s, feel inner conflict about their place in their parents' priorities, and sometimes take personal responsibility for their parents' decision to divorce. Dr. Post offers that loyalty to marriage supports children and the marriage partners in ways that are interdependent and complex. In Lesson 3, Loyalty Can Save Another's Life, Dr. Post tells the story of George, who experienced the trauma of third-degree burns over nearly 70% of his body in an industrial accident. George is certain that the love and care of his fiancée, Vivian, is the single reason he is not only alive, but happy to be so. And George relates that he tried to make her leave him many times during his very long recovery process, saying that he didn't want her to limit her life by staying bound to him. Vivian, now his wife, never considered leaving. She said, quote, "I can't imagine what I would do without him. Even driving to the hospital, I'd think, who could I ever be with? He's the one. He's it. He's my one and only," end quote. Although George and Vivian's story is powerful, it is not unique. Research studies on loyalty and trauma funded by the Institute on Research for Unlimited Love produced these 3 findings. First, love heals over time. That is, love helps trauma patients to fight for their life. Second, loyalty is a buffer against stress. This is true for both the traumatized person and for those who love him or her. And third, you can offer loyal love with confidence. Over time, love dissolves the hardness of difficulty and despair experienced as an outcome of trauma by both the person experiencing it and those who love that person. Loyalty is not perfect, is Lesson 4. And here Dr. Post delves into some of the special challenges presented by our increasingly mobile, rapidly aging, ever-changing society. He writes, quote, "Loyalty is often a delicate balancing act that evokes a whole range of emotions, from joy to despair. One particularly complex compromise involves our aging parents. Although many times we care for our parents out of pure love, sometimes it is loyalty alone that nudges us, and we may sometimes wonder why we are trying so hard to help," end quote. This section, as you can imagine, has very personal meaning for me, and I suspect that it does for others.